Entertainment Soldier here, and I'm back talking about Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Season 2, Episode 7, and my thoughts on this episode. Listen, I wasn't expecting much from this episode. I really wasn't. Going in thinking, listen, this is going to be a typical Lower Decks episode with Mariner bit-making Boimler her bitch, and Boimler just being overly happy about seeing shit. It's exactly that. It was just exactly that. It was a Lower Decks episode. Now I can respect that you can see they were trying. They were trying with this episode. And I will give them credit for that. The first 10 minutes of this episode was kind of alright. You know, it wasn't bad. Like, if you had just kept with that the whole way through and not bring Mariner over, you could have had a good episode. But you bring Mariner over and it turns into a typical Lower Decks episode. And yeah, it's bad. And again, like, Boimler could be a good character. And so could Mariner. If they would just stop trying to make them funny. Like, you've really got to stop doing that. I mean, 10 seconds into Mariner's part of this episode and we're already getting sex jokes. Like, well, probably not sex jokes, but how she likes to hump somebody on the crew of Strange New Worlds. Like, 10 seconds. Like, seriously. We are not all 15-year-olds, okay? You could have used this episode to, I don't know, kind of give Mariner a bit more of just a character. Yes, in the cartoon world, she's annoying. In the real world, I don't know, maybe she takes things seriously. Maybe she just has to make a joke of things. Maybe she just wants to be a lazy bitch all the time. Like, come on. And if this was supposed to, like, open the door to a fucking Lower Decks, I don't know, live action, then I think you've kind of given evidence of why you shouldn't. Because, I don't know, they're okay actors, Mariner and Boimler, but it just... Yeah, the purple hair, and Mariner, who obviously isn't as skinny as they kind of draw her in the cartoons. Yeah, this is kind of something you should probably keep to cartoons, in my opinion. But overall, I think I can see good parts of this. I like the cartoon stuff that we got in this episode. I thought that was original for Star Trek. You know, the credits were in cartoons. That was interesting. And the ending, you know, seeing that particular group as cartoons, it was interesting. Until they then made it into Lower Decks again. It's just fucking hell. I mean, yeah. It's just bad. I mean, it's not terrible. This is definitely not the worst episode of the season. That still goes to Spock's fucking episode. But, I mean, even in this episode, they pretty much themselves say what's happening with Spock is just wrong. And I don't know whether that's just them having self-awareness. But, yeah, it's just Spock shouldn't be acting like the way he is. And it is just ridiculous at this point. But, yeah, there are good parts of this episode, but unfortunately, the majority of it is bad. And, yeah, I mean, credit to them for releasing this early. I mean, definitely I would say it's a definite plus. I would say if you like Kurtzman's Star Trek, yeah, you're probably happy to see this. I mean, I didn't really care. I have to be honest, like, I only randomly came across this. I'm like, if I didn't randomly come across this on Twitter, I would not have known there was a Lower Decks episode. I mean, a new episode of Strange New Worlds. I just wouldn't have. Like, I just wouldn't care. So, yeah. I don't know what that's gonna do to the schedules. I mean, are we still getting a new episode this week, or are we just having to wait till next week for a new episode? I don't know. Probably, I'm guessing, but, well... Oh yeah, because we got that stupid sing-along episode on the 3rd of August, so yeah, there is a new episode this week. Okay. Fine. But what would I give this episode out of 10? I don't know. Like, again, it's not a good episode. But Boimler's first 10 minutes on his own, yes, cringy at some points, it is kind of interesting. Because again, Boimler is the, kind of fanboy representation of Star Trek fans. He is. And, you can kind of like the character for that. So, the first 10 minutes of him dealing with what's happened to him is actually interesting. And cringy at the same time. So, it's not a terrible episode. I'm not saying it's terrible. So, but I can't give it a 5. Like, it's not that good. But I can't give it a 1 because it's not that bad. So, a 3. I think it is a bad episode. But it had potential. So, it's a 3 out of 10. I don't know. I'm going to have to hear back from my subscribers as well. Because I'm going to probably need to rewatch this again. But... yeah, I think it's a 3 out of 10. I think that's as fair as I can be. So, let's get to spoilers now. If you do not want to hear spoilers, leave in 3, 2, 1. So, the episode starts off with the Lower Decks cartoon of, art. So, we're not, real world yet. We've gone into a Lower Decks episode where Mariner and Boimler are preparing to go scan some ancient... portal. And so Boimler, as he always is, massively excited for this away mission. But then he gets told that Mariner is in charge and then wonders why she's in charge. And we all know how Mariner is, like, yeah, she doesn't give a shit. Yeah, she's in charge. Yeah, it's more like a punishment for her to be in charge. Blah, 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 blah. Typical Lower Decks. Then we see Tendi and Ransom, and they're heading on the away mission too. They get down to the planet, and Tendi kind of brings up the fact the portal was discovered by her people, the Orions first, and then Boimler pretty much brings up the fact that, yeah, but your people are mainly pirates, so it was definitely Federation that found this portal first. And this kind of was a cringy scene because of the fact that then we had to kind of go through the whole, stereotypical shit. Like, you shouldn't do that because not all Orions, even back then, were pirates, even though the vast majority of them were. But again, I just didn't need this fucking scene. Like, okay, Tendi, your people, the Orions, yes, they probably did have scientists. Yes, they probably did have doctors, nurses, and all that shit. But the vast, vast, vast majority of them were fucking pirates. Okay, and it shouldn't be like, oh, we shouldn't be offensive to our people. That's what they were. They were pirates. They were literally stealing people and kidnapping people and fucking selling them into slavery at one point. Like, seriously, we need to have a fucking... oh my god, I just hate the victim mentality bullshit. It's just unbelievably annoying. So they get to the portal device, start scanning it, and then Boimler goes over to it, and Ransom tries to take a photo of him, but somehow taking the picture of Boimler next to the portal activates it, and he gets sucked into the past. And Mariner and the rest of them are left to try to figure out what to do to get Boimler back. Boimler comes out of the tunnel from the other side and bumps into Una, La'an and Spock. And he has gone from being a cartoon to being live action. And then they put a little joke in the beginning with that fact, you know, he says, you all look real or something, and then just collapses unconscious. We then go to the credit scene, which they did in cartoon form, and I kind of liked that. But I didn't like the bit when they put that stupid fucking worm on the end of the Enterprise again. I think that's just ridiculous. I know they do it in the lower decks credits, but you don't need to do that in Strange New Worlds. You really don't. Then the next scene, we go to the Enterprise, where Pike tells us the Enterprise is en route to Sector 3 to hand them some grain because of a humanitarian crisis on the planet. And so that's what the Enterprise was doing before it found the portal. But now that they have found the portal and Boimler, they've got to focus on that now. But they're also going to keep on with the mission to give the food to the people, whatever. So Boimler's in the hospital. He wakes up from being unconscious and then kind of thinks that he is in a holodeck, but then figures out, nope, this is real. He's back in the past, and then remembers what the rules are for Federation officers who go into the past. Don't mention things, try not to break, you know, the timeline, all that shit. And Pike starts kind of, you know, realizing, yes, this is a time fuck up, so they need to also be cautious. And I kind of liked that about this, like both sides not being idiots in this situation. Well, Boimler is being an idiot when it comes to the fanboy shit, but you're kind of seeing that both sides understand they can't ruin the timeline. Like, they can't ask questions, and Boimler can't, you know, give them answers. Like, so I enjoyed that part of it. But I would also bring up, and I've already said this before, Boimler's hairdo, it is fucking weird. I mean, you don't really kind of notice it in the cartoon because it is a cartoon. But when you're watching it live action, it really does look strange. It really does. I think he should probably change that if this does go to live action. And also in this scene, you kind of do see him really fanboy out Enterprise, you know, Pike, all that shit. And I don't understand what his problem is. Oh, well, I do now, but it was kind of weird how he was reacting to Una. I mean, we find out why later, but yeah. And when we do find out, it's still kind of weird how he's acting towards her. Like, I get that's a big thing in his life and all of that, but I don't know. It was really weird. I thought he was going to go to, like, maybe she's going to turn evil and do the same thing they did last season with that. But anyway, so La'an takes Boimler to somewhere different. Well, I think she was just taking him some rooms so that they could figure out what to do about getting him back to his timeline. Anyway, whilst La'an is taking him through the ship, Boimler's fanboying out about the consoles of the old ship, and, you know, La'an has to remind him, yeah, don't fuck about with it because you don't want to mess up the past. They go through the whole rules of this, you know, time paradox crap. Like, don't tell us the future, you don't tell us, don't break the past, whatever. And then La'an brings up, you know, don't get attached to people. And Boimler kind of says this weird thing when he says, is that a new rule? It's like, how would it be new, you fucking idiot? You're from the future. Whatever she says is old, whatever you say is new. Like, anyway. But anyway, La'an explains, like, she's pretty much been through this before, and listen, just don't fuck up with the past, basically. So, Boimler gets left in, I think, Pike's room, where he's just been told to kind of stick around and not mess around with anything. And again, he's excited, he's fanboying all over the place, he's in the past, he does a captain's log about it, and then decides to jump on Pike's saddle because apparently he wants to do that. I don't know why. And then bumps into Ahura. And so he also fanboys over her, mentions how what she's done in life and all that shit. Well, she kind of doesn't tell her everything, actually anything. But anyway, Boimler gets called away to go, back down to the planet to go help with the away team who are scanning the portal. Gets down there. Again, fanboys out about the communicators and the tricorders because they're old. And, pretty much does what every fanboy would do. Again, that's pretty much the majority of the first bit of this episode. Him just fanboying about everything Star Trek. So, they're scanning the portal, pretty much realise it just needs a bit more power, and there's a little bit of the metal it needs to power it up left on the portal, so they say all they've got to do is scrape some of it off. But also Boimler kind of explains how the portal got activated, and it looks like the camera's energy activated it by activating the metal graph bits on the portal, which somehow activated it. So whilst Boimler is explaining this to Spock for some random reason decides to laugh at the crap joke Boimler told. And this kind of terrifies Boimler because this is not how Spock's supposed to react to anything. He's not supposed to burst out laughing like a fucking child. But apparently that's what Spock does now. And now Boimler is kind of terrified because has he just fucked up the future by making Spock laugh? Yes, it's ridiculous, but again, it's Boimler and he knows everything about Spock, but apparently Spock never told anybody about his laughing phase. At least that's what Boimler puts it off at the end as. But also, Boimler asks the Doctor, is that normal for Spock to just laugh? And the Doctor says, that's very new. So, yeah, Boimler still thinks he's kind of fucked up the future. But after that, Pike tells the away team they have to get back up to the ship because an Orion ship has just been spotted in the area. They beam back up to the ship, and then the Enterprise goes to yellow alert, ready for the Orions, because they scan the ship, it turns out to be an Orion ship. And as most Orions in this time period are pirates, and there's been a lot of pirate activity in the area, they kind of see this ship as a threat. But Boimler, because he got shamed for pointing out a fact to Tilly, decides to try, nearly meddles in the situation between the Enterprise and the Orion ship, and kind of convinces Pike not to shoot at the Orion ship as it's a science ship. Now the problem with this is Boimler has messed with time, because if this Orion ship was supposed to meet up with the Enterprise in the past, I mean, it could be this was always meant to happen. Like, if this had been an Orion science ship, it might have been attacked by the Enterprise and destroyed. Maybe Boimler was supposed to be here to stop that from happening, so Tilly's ancestor wouldn't be killed. I kind of would have liked for them to have explained it like that, because then might have made the episode a bit more important than just a crossover episode. Like, this was always meant to happen. But they don't say that in this episode, which is kind of weird. Anyway, Boimler gets Pike to back down and negotiate with the Orions. The Orions are not really listening. They kind of just say they're a science ship, and then they warp away with the portal, as it looks like they've just stolen the portal, and now Pike looks at Boimler like, I told you so, and Boimler's like, shit. But anyway, next scene, Pike's with Una pretty much saying it's not really Boimler's fault. Pike shouldn't have really listened to him, and this is kind of a shit situation to be in because Boimler knows the future. He knows what's going to happen, or at least he knows where they're all going to be and everything. So Pike doesn't want to just rely on Boimler because he also knows that's against the rules, but it's a difficult thing for him to navigate. So he doesn't know what to do, but he definitely knows they have to get rid of Boimler because he's just still too much of a threat. Because again, all the information he knows, the damage he could do, all that stuff. So we go to Boimler, who's gone to the bar, and he gets messed about with Chaplin and the pilot, who kind of just take the piss out of him, and well, not take the piss, kind of just make well, they start messing with him basically. So Boimler, deals with this. I mean, then, Chaplin invites him to something next week. Boimler thinks it's to do with Pike's birthday, but then sees that they're both surprised to know that because Pike's never told him that his birthday. So he thinks he's fucked up the future again. Oh, he also mentions it was Pike's... he also mentions Pike's birthday is a holiday now in the Federation. Okay. Then we see Spock walk in and start smiling at Chapel, which freaks out Boimler again, because again, he knows that this is not how Spock's supposed to be actually acting. Like, he shouldn't be smiling, he shouldn't be making jokes or laughing at jokes. So, maybe the writers are self-aware, I don't know. So Boimler goes to chase Chapel to kind of ask what the hell is wrong with Spock. He then doesn't realise that they're in a relationship with each other when he starts to break the rules and says that's not how Spock's supposed to be acting, because in the future he's Vulcan. He doesn't smile, he doesn't laugh. He knows everybody's important to Spock's life, and Chapel isn't mentioned once apparently. So Chapel is starting to kind of realise, or at least I think she's starting to realise, their relationship hasn't really got much hope if Spock's just going to turn back to what he used to be before her. And then when Boimler realises that, holy shit, they might be a couple, he starts to shut up. I mean, you kind of should have just shut up in the first place, Boimler, but okay. But I like this scene because, again, it's showing Boimler, he fucked up. And Chapel, you see that Chapel, again, I think she realises relationship's dead, or at least gonna die. But you can see she cares, and it's an emotional scene between them, and I liked it. I thought it was a good scene. She comforts Boimler and says, listen, it's not your fault. You're not screwing with Spock. I think it's our relationship that's doing this to Spock. So calm down. And, Boimler says sorry and kind of tries to pretend that he can hope for their future, even though we kind of all know where that's going. But again, I thought it was a good scene. Anyway, next scene, Boimler goes to the bridge to kind of, find out what's going on. Spock can't track the Orions, so they're pretty much fucked. If they can't find the portal, then they can't send Boimler home. And then Boimler brings up, yes, you can't find them, but he can, because he's from the future. He knows more about the technology. He knows about the Orion's technology as well. So he can reconfigure the sensors to track the Orions. Unfortunately, this is going to kind of break the rules. Like, La'an has to tell him that. But for some weird reason, Boimler seems to think if they all turn their back and not watch what he does to the computer, that will keep the timeline, clean. I mean, Boimler, you're still fucking up with their scanners and improving their scanners to be able to detect Orions, so you are still fucking up with time. Unless they delete it all. I don't really know. They don't really explain this. They kind of let Boimler fuck about with the computer, make it able to track the Orions, and then we don't hear about it again. Like, that's a serious, fucking about with time kind of thing. Anyway, so they all stand in the corner, not looking at Boimler fix the scanners. Boimler fix the scanners, and they're able to detect the Orions, and Pike runs after the Orions to get back the portal. So they find the Orions. Pike wants to pretty much use weapons and force them to hand over the portal device, but, you know, Boimler steps in and says, listen, you don't have to use force with them. The Orions, you can talk to them, and you are known in the future as somebody who's not about force, but is about negotiation and diplomacy, so why not try that first, and then, you know, basically do what Starfleet officers are supposed to do. And he also brings up Pike's hair. I don't know. Again, it's Boimler. That's what he does. So Pike agrees. He's going to use a diplomatic approach to talk to the Orions. So Pike negotiates with the Orions. Boimler brings up the fact that the Orions want to trade. They see that as respecting from one another, from one person from another person. So Pike decides, fine, we'll trade something for the portal. And then the Orions scan the Enterprise, see they have a shitload of grain on board, so they want the grain for the portal. And Pike's like, fine, you can have this important grain that we're supposed to be sending to Seclic 3 for the portal. So Boimler has kind of fucked up already, because now they have to give some important grain to the Orions for the portal. So they get the portal back. They head back to the planet, and they send Boimler home by reactivating the portal. At least that's what they think is going to happen. Because whilst Boimler is saying goodbye to them all, they activate the portal, and then who turns up from the other end? Mariner. This is when the episode stops being a Strange New Worlds episode and starts being a Lower Decks episode. Because as soon as Mariner comes in, she's going nuts saying, where's Uhura, the uniforms, and Boimler's just gone back to having to deal with Mariner trying to calm her down and try to get her to take the situation seriously, because they are back in the past and they don't want to fuck it up. So, next scene, we're back on the Enterprise, where Pike has now got to figure out a way to get the both of them back to the future. But unfortunately, the portal device only had enough for one more round trip, and so they got to find a way to... Well, they've got to find some sort of energy or something to fuel the portal to send them back. And Mariner, whilst talking to Boimler and saying that young Spock is hot, for some reason, again, it's like, okay, look, I get it. You fuck everything that moves. I get it. But can you not, for this one episode, could you just not be you? Could you just be a normal Federation officer? Seriously. So they need to find some heronium, I think it's called. That's the material that fuels the portal. And Mariner just says, why not just make the material from scratch? And Boimler kind of has to bring up the fact that that's not exactly simple. And Spock says they can do it, but it's a very dangerous job. And so Mariner volunteers Boimler to help Spock, and she'll go work with Uhura. And that's what they're going to do now. Spock's going to make the material for the portal, and Mariner and Uhura are going to try to figure out the text on the portal. Yeah. Oh, and Boimler starts panicking again because he doesn't want to work with Spock anymore, because he keeps getting terrified that he might be fucking up Spock. And as Spock is a very important person in, Federation history, that's kind of a massive risk. He doesn't want to kind of be the person to destroy the Federation and all that stuff. And he's also he's already worked with Spock. I think he's had his little fanboy phase over that, and he's just terrified about fucking up Spock, basically. So next scene, you see Mariner working with Uhura, and they do keep mentioning that Uhura is very job focused. She doesn't really waste time. She's always working. She's always studying and all that stuff. Oh, I did forget the scene between Mariner and Una, because Una is starting to get kind of worried about her future because Boimler keeps acting very weird around her, and then Mariner brings up the fact Boimler has a pin-up of Una in his bunk, and Mariner keeps trying to, she's making this sound sexual, and that's what's kind of making Una feel weird, and Mariner at the same time trying to tell her, no, it's not sexual, but doesn't exactly explain it very well. So Una is kind of walking away, kind of a bit creeped out. So, again, classic Mariner. It's all going to go back to sex for some reason with her. Anyway, so whilst Uhura and Mariner are working together, Mariner keeps bringing up the fact that she's very dedicated, but did you take time off? She brings up the rule book, because apparently in the Federation rule book, there are plenty of ways for a Federation officer to slack off that the rules allow. I don't know. I literally don't know why they keep doing this with that character. It's literally she's just a lazy cow. Seriously. Fucking hell. But we also see in this scene, Uhura starts to be kind of overwhelmed with what she's going to do in the future, because Boimler and Mariner keep saying she's going to be this really important person. She's going to achieve a lot of stuff. And she's only 22. For a 22-year-old to hear all this, it's going to obviously be overwhelming. So Mariner kind of sees that Uhura needs to take some time off, and she gets her to go to the bar where she makes up a couple of drinks for both of them, and Erica also popped along the pilot. So she makes them a couple of drinks. Uhura's still not drinking because she still wants to study. But Mariner kind of talks her into having a drink, saying that this, if you don't take time off, it's going to ruin your life and all that shit. So Uhura takes a drink, drinks it all, and then... But whilst Uhura is still working, Erica figures out some of the letters on what Uhura is trying to decipher. Turns out Erica was assigned to some base during the Klingon War, and somebody tried to sell her some sort of game that had the same lettering. So with that, Uhura is able to decipher the portal device. And yeah, so they can now read the portal's information. So we go to the next scene where Boimler is helping Spock make the material needed to reactivate the portal, and Spock chooses this moment to kind of talk to Boimler about his little chat with Chapel. Now, Boimler is kind of seriously worried about this. He's, like always, so he's kind of tells Spock, listen, the Federation needs you to be Vulcan, Spock. But Spock brings up the fact that if you're telling him this now, aren't you in fact messing up with the time period? So Boimler kind of sees that, yeah, that's probably true, and starts to realise maybe this is what Spock's supposed to be doing. Letting his human side out for this little bit in his, time. Letting himself experience these emotions for a bit. And then in the future, he's just going to go back to being normal Spock. So Boimler says that's okay. Then when Spock activates the machine that's going to make the material needed, it starts to go a bit insane. They both have to jump into cover because of the fact that the machine basically blows up. and now they can't really make the material because it's just too hard to make. So now they don't know what to do because they can't find the material they need, and they can't get it, and they can't make it. So what's the plan? So Boimler goes off to have a little sulk in the engine room, where we see Pella again, and so Boimler's kind of worried that he's stuck in the past, and if he is stuck in the past, he can't really do anything because of the rules of going back in time. So he'll have to be a hermit somewhere, just sticking out of the way of the timeline. And so Peliad pretty much tells him she's been alive for almost thousands of years, and she hasn't just done nothing. So she kind of tells Boimler, if you are stuck here, why not help and, you know, do some good in the universe? So Boimler chooses this opportunity to break the rules and tries to steal a shuttle so that he can somehow get in contact with the Orions so they can get back the shipment of grain for the people of Sektlet 3, because it's kind of his fault the Orions have got it. But whilst he's trying to steal the shuttle, turns out he's not alone. Mariner's also there to help him, and Boimler kind of explains why he's doing this to Mariner. Mariner doesn't really care because if it's breaking the rules, she likes to do it. But before they can take off, La'an finds them and then brings them to see Pike, where Pike is again in the kitchen. And Pike just has a word with them both and says, listen, I get it. You're both kind of struggling with this, especially you, Boimler. And he also asks Boimler to stop telling people about his birthday. And Boimler brings up the fact that, what if you don't have that many left? Shouldn't you let your friends celebrate you? But then Pike pretty much tells Boimler, I know what's going to happen to me in the future. And, you know, you don't have to worry about that. He's fine with where he's going. And so Boimler says that's okay then. And we also hear about, you know, Pike's dad and how, you know, he died at the same age and what Pike's gonna be. And Pike misses talking with his dad, even if it was just arguments. And so celebrating his birthday is not something he's really big on. So, you know, he just wants to have a drink and think about his dad on his birthday, not have to deal with, like, having a party. And then Pike pretty much says to Boimler and Mariner, I get it. You come back in the past, you're seeing your heroes. I would be the same, and we get a Archer reference. Like, if Pike went back to meet Captain Archer, he would act the same. And then this kind of wakes up Boimler, who figures out the same material they need to activate the portal is the same material used to make the NX class Enterprise. So what Boimler kind of figures out is that when a new Enterprise is made, or a new ship class is made, and it's given the new name, a piece of the old ship is built into the newer ship. It's kind of like a tradition or something in the Federation. I kind of have a problem with this because I don't think the NX class was the last ship to hold the name Enterprise from this time period. I mean, there must have been 2 or 3 in the middle there somewhere. So this, I kind of think, does break Star Trek canon. So I'm not really sure about that. But anyway, that's the plan basically. Find the piece of the Enterprise NX that's in this Enterprise and melt it down for the material and use it to send them back. So they go around the ship looking for the piece. Turns out to be in the engine room. They find it. They strip the materials and burn it, melt it down so they can reactivate the portal. They head to the transporter, get on the transporter, but before Mariner leaves, she tells Una about the pin-up that Boimler has and pretty much explains to Una that it's not a sexual picture, it's literally the picture Starfleet uses to recruit people. So Una feels a lot better about this, and Boimler pretty much says that's why he joined Starfleet, because of that poster, and wasn't scared of Una. He was just like, you're very important in my life because that photo got me into Starfleet. And Una pretty much says, why didn't you lead with that, Mariner? And I'm just like the same, like, yes, Mariner, why didn't you just tell Una the truth? Like, why did you call it a pin-up? Why don't you just call it a poster? It's just unbelievably annoying. So they beam down to the planet. Before they do, Spock says, live long and prosper to Boimler. And Boimler just fans the fuckboy out. And they beam down. The Orion's there, you know, because it looks like this is important. And also, Boimler did send him a message to come and see them because of his plan with the with the shuttle. And then Pike does the right thing here. He's diplomatic with the Orions and says, listen, we know you're not all pirates, we know you're scientists, and wouldn't it be better if instead of fighting each other, we kind of work with each other so that we would give you credit for finding the portal, and this might help your people see your part of Orion society as valuable as piracy. And so this kind of makes the Orion a bit happier. And then Boimler brings up the fact of Tilly and who Tilly is, like Queen of the Wind or something. And this apparently shocks the fuck out of the Orion. And then the Orion just says, okay, do what the hell you want. And now he just feels happy that his people are going to be more acknowledged for science more than piracy. So they leave them to it. Boimler and Mariner get sent back through the portal. Pike gives them he gives them a goodbye nod. And they go through the portal, get back to their own time, back in the cartoon form. And they go back to the Cerritos, where we find out Mariner actually volunteered to lead the away mission. And this kind of makes Boimler happy because it looks like Mariner's starting to take her job more seriously again. And the episode ends with a cartoon scene of Strange New Worlds crew, and they start feeling weird because of the Orion alcohol they've been given, and then it just ends with them all going crazy because Spock's hand starts going weird, Erica's eyes go big. I don't know. It was just this really stupid and cringeworthy ending. And that's it. That's how the episode ends. So I'm going to stick to a 3 out of 10. I think there was potential with this episode, but it went too heavily Lower Decks by the end. And yeah, that's my thoughts on episode 7. If you like this video, give it a like. If you dislike this video, give it a dislike. And if you like my content, do think about subscribing. And if you do have a comment, I'll try to get back to it as soon as possible. Anytime more, soldier. Bye.